Okay, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for participating in this very first session in this 9 days virtual Marine Seismic Symposium 2021. On behalf of all the PIs and conveners, I would like to first thank to NSF for the support. And also, I would like to thank Casey from IRIS to put this together over the last few months. That's a tremendous effort and organization, and we're going to have great fun. So we have a very busy 2 hours coming up here. So we will convene 2 sessions. First one focuses on the mechanics of what you early career scientists need to know about writing a marine seismology proposal. We mainly focus on elite PIs affiliated with US institutions using US facilities. But if you're international participants, you have questions about collaborator status, etc., please feel free to ask in the Q&A session. Jinhua Gong, she's a first-year postdoc in marine seismology at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, will chair the first session. And the second session, we will focus on the meet and greet with successful scientists who uses a variety of marine seismological data, facility, and other community resources. Then let's ask questions how they can materialize their science questions in their head to the successful proposal. Liam Morser, he is the first-year PhD student in MIT who joined program, will chair this session. So now let's start the first one. Jinhua, are you ready?
Yes.
Great, it's your show.
Thanks, Masako, for your introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to this early career session of the Marine Seismology Symposium. I'm Jianhua Gong. I will be your moderator for the first hour of this early career session. So now please allow me to briefly introduce the schedule of the first hour session. The first hour will feature speakers and panelists from the National Science Foundation and several US marine seismic facilities. It will focus on proposal writing and the logistical and technical angles of planning a research cruise. There are 6 talks in the first hour session. The first 4 talks are about US marine seismic facilities. Each talk will be about 5 minutes long. The following 2 talks are from NSF. Each talk will be about 10 minutes long. After that, there will be a 20-minute Q&A. So during the presentations, we encourage you to put your questions into the chat. I will collect those questions and our panelists will answer them in the Q&A session. We understand that 20 minutes is really short for answering questions on 6 different topics. So please don't hesitate to put your questions into the chat. The earlier a question gets into the chat, the higher chance it could be answered. Also, if you are a graduate student, postdoc, or young scientist who is the leading PI working on a marine seismic experiment proposal for the first time, please remember this is a session for you and don't be afraid to ask your questions. So with that, let's get started. Our first speaker is Dr. Sean Higgins, Director of Marine Operations at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory of Columbia University. He will talk to us about RV Landsat. So take it away, Sean.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Really happy to introduce the Landsat to you young scientists that are looking to do marine seismology at sea. This is the Landsat here. This is a picture taken when we first brought the Landsat back in the New York Harbor back in 2013. Next slide, please. Just a couple quick points. No need to read this, but one, the Landsat has been part of the academic fleet for about the last 13 years. It's now owned by Columbia University as of December 2020 and is operated by Columbia's Lamont Doherty under a cooperative agreement. We have community oversight from the Marine Seismic Research Oversight Committee. And I just want to mention that because that's a group that you should become familiar with. That's a group of community scientists that it serve as a liaison to the science community and is an important group for you both to learn to get involved with, but to also reach out to for advice. The Langseth itself is a fully capable 3D seismic vessel capable of deploying 4 by 6 kilometer array for 3D seismic and up to a 15-kilometer single cable. So we do a lot of deep crustal imaging around the world, and we'll show you some examples of that as we move through here. Next slide, please. This is a quick summary of the equipment we have on board. Again, I mentioned different length streamers that we can tow. We have a 36 gun air array with 6,600 cubic inches. Can be made smaller as necessary. We have a Sercel 408 system. We just finished installation of a GunLink 2000 source controller. This was a major upgrade to the vessel this year. We have a Kongsberg EM-122 and a gondola sonar pod below the ship, Knudsen 3260 sub-bottom profiler, and an ADCP installed in the pod there. We have other instruments for thermosalinograph on board, launch XBTs. We have a gravimeter and a towed magnetometer as well. And I can't emphasize this more than enough. We have very experienced technical staff. It's probably the biggest resource that we can make available to you when you're planning for your cruises. Our staff probably encompasses more than 150 to 200 years of experience in the seismic industry and represents a huge resource for everybody in the community. Next slide, please. This is the main lab of the Langseth and stuff where you'd be on board the Langseth. All these screens are monitoring sonars here on the left, a lot of the seismic things here on the center screens, and a lot of cameras around the vessel and other things. But there's between 40 and 60 different data streams being collected in an average cruise we go through here with terabytes of data. We have a terabyte, you have basically about 200 terabytes of storage on the vessel itself. So we're very capable of keeping multiple copies of the data. There's software stations and hardware there to do processing on board. So we're quite capable in terms of what we can do for you out there. Next slide, please. One of the most important things we develop with the PIs is what we call our science support plan. And I just took a contents page and kind of shrunk it down, but it's very detailed work on, all the different aspects of what you're trying to do, operations, system status of the other equipment, who's participating, all the environmental planning that goes into it that you'll hear more about. All your shooting parameters and stuff that you'd use for seismic are all documented here. So this is sort of our contract with you, the PI, and stuff of how your operation is going to be carried out, how the data is going to be handled, all the things related to the vessel and the experiment. So this is quite an extensive document, but this is something that's done for every cruise. Next, please. These are some of the tools that we have available. The multi-size software is something we use when we're at sea. It tracks your progress. It keeps track of all the logging and stuff that's done during a cruise. A lot of detailed reports can be done. We can monitor this from shore in real time. So we can track your progress, any issues. It gives us a way to communicate directly with the science team on the ship. The SERBOP software on the bottom of the slide here, this is a great planning tool. It's used both during the planning process, but you can put in all your tracks. You can set up all the parameters and run your cruise in virtual mode to look at the timing and stuff so that what you're proposing is achievable in the days that you have selected in advance. Next, please. We work a lot with the Opsec group, and the ocean bottom seismometers become a bigger and bigger part of what we do in our active shooting cruises. So we deploy lots of OBSs in combination with our seismic equipment. So it's very much a commonplace these days to be doing both of these in tandem. Next, please. These are just a few pictures. Masako had wanted us to put in some of the products that have come out of our experiments. The top picture is from work done up in the Church DC with Bernie Coakley's group back in about 2011. 3D Cube down here is by Nathan Bang's group done off Costa Rica. And the right is some other work with the USGS up in the Bering Sea, looking at velocity, amplitude structures and things here. Next, please. This is a picture in the Atlantic looking at fracture zones down here, and this was the first time we deployed a 12.5 kilometer streamer back in 2016, looking at details here. Next, please. We've also been involved in deploying other types of systems off the vessel. Back in 2015, we did this P cable, high resolution, shallow, detailed project off the coast of New Jersey. This involved like the largest P cable array ever really deployed, a 24 streamer array with a 3 kilometer long streamer underneath to get good velocity control. So this was a project we did with Greg Mountain and many colleagues and stuff from UTIG and other places and stuff. So we've done other types of experiments as well off the Langseth. Next, please. Just to take a look at some of the multi-beam capabilities, the M122 is quite capable. This is a backscatter imagery along the New England coast off the Cape Hatteras Outer Ridge up in the North Atlantic. And this is just some of the backscatter imagery that came off of this really large scale multi-beam experiment by UNH. Next, please. Next, please. Next, yep, there we go. And this is a picture from Canales cruise off the Azores. I like to show it for any flat earth people out there, just as, you know, but more importantly, it's a good overview taken from a GoPro, looking down at the back of the ship. And what you can see there is on the strings going across on the outer ring, outer streamers are the magnetics, towed magnetics, and the passive acoustic monitoring system for marine mitigation, mammal mitigation. And then we got the 4 gun strings, and then you got the streamer down the middle. So it gives you kind of an overview of all the equipment that's towed off the back deck of the vessel there. Next, please. And most importantly here, if you want to use the vessel here over the next few years, the Langseth has been in the Pacific since 2016, and they'll be finishing up its Pacific cruises here, hopefully this summer. And we've got some of our first cruises planned in the Atlantic, as we'll be transitioning over into the Atlantic here by spring of 22. And NSF just put out this regional plan expectations for the Langseth. So that encourage people where to write proposals in the Atlantic and adjacent seas in the 22 to 24 timeframe. And I would encourage you, if you've got any questions, reach out to myself or Jesus Gayton, our technical services manager. And like I say, any of your, contacting us during the proposal process, pre-proposal, is an excellent time to give us a call and talk about what you want to do, so we can give you advice in advance and help you put together, the best proposal. So I'll leave it there, and we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sean, for your talk. So our next speaker is Mr. Lee Allett, Manager of Shipboard Technical Support at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And he will introduce to us about the SIO Portable MCS facility. Take it away, Lee.
Thank you. I'm glad I could speak with everyone today. Let me. Okay, I'm here to give a overview of our portable multi-channel seismic system. So this would be a system that is put on a ship of opportunity. Typically, that would be a Eunos vessel. So I'll start with talking a little bit about the major equipment that's part of that. So we had a 48-channel streamer that was purchased in 2005. We're starting to move away from that. We still have it. We have used it recently, but then that is being replaced by the 96-channel 6¼ meter group spacing streamer that we have. We have all 5011 compass birds now as the cable levelers for that system. The sound sources we have in our inventory, 4 Sercel GI 210s. The most typical configuration of that is 45-105, but very different configurations is something that can certainly be discussed during a pre-cruise planning process. We have protected species mitigation equipment. So we contract observers, but we have big eyes, night vision devices, reticle binoculars that are travel with the system to handle the mitigation requirements that we have. So that we ship those with the system. So it's not something separate that someone would have to be responsible for. Next. The data acquisition system, we've set it up so that it can be portable and go on multiple ships. It handles the data acquisition aspect right into the seismic recording, source controller, navigation. We're often bringing the navigation signals in from whichever ship that we're on. We can do a real-time brute stack, and of course have a bird controller, and we're monitoring and recording that. During data acquisition. Talk about a little bit of some advances we've made in the past couple of years with the hardware, the acquisition hardware. We really got it down to 2 small racks where we used to have multiple computers to integrate when we got to the ship. A lot of it is more self-contained now and integrated into 2 racks so they can be set up in the lab of a vessel and more quickly integrated. The back deck integration takes quite a bit more. And then here's a overview of the real-time QC that we've been able to make available recently. So in real time, we're using a separate system from the recording software, inputting the geometry, doing some basic filtering, and doing for QC in real time. Let's see, we have a short video of a GI gun here. So slowing it down, the example I want to get here is the GI sound source that we're using with the portable multi-channel system. Is actually, it's a 2-chambered sound source. So that you're, so you have less bubble oscillation. And then showing a few examples from recent cruises. So this is from the 2017 Early Career Scientist cruise that was on Roger Revelle. We were off the coast of Oregon running surveys for various purposes. Next. This was in 2018 on the RV Atlantis. This was a IODP site survey from Bermuda back to Woods Hole. You can see our track on the left and example of the data on the right. In 2019, we did 2 cruises on the RV Thomas G. Thompson. So we're our Argentine Basin over to Walvis Ridge. There were 2 separate cruises, went into port in between. You see the 2 survey areas and some example data. Here's a list of example vessels that we've carried out operations on. So we have worked off some smaller vessels. They're not all, it doesn't have to be a global class vessel. I guess the example is kind of the point I wanted to make here. If the vessel has the right facilities, right, deck space, lots of different factors, but it's possible depending on what the work is. Here's an example on the Atlantis. So you can see these on the kind of upper right-hand side of this picture are 3 of the compressors. They take up the most deck space. They're probably one of the more complex pieces of equipment that we have. Next slide, just a couple quick questions asked if we were talking to a PI about considering a proposal. Where is the work? Is it feasible to work in that region? Can we handle the shipping logistics? Can the vessel support the equipment? Then we get into some configuration issues that eventually gets to where, what are the survey parameters? What is the compressor? Can the compressor support the rep rate that's desired? Currently, the MCS system is proposed similar to ship time. So it's on the shipboard STRS, which that'll be presented on here. But during a proposal, providing a narrative of the equipment necessary and an overview of the logistics is very helpful, and I can help you with that, or our technical staff can help you with that. I have a listing here of the technical personnel, and another advice on beginning the environmental compliance process as soon as a funding decision has been made. And that is all I have. And I'll answer questions when I can.
Yeah, thanks, Lee, for your informative talk. And let's move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is John Collins, Director of Ocean Bottom Seismic Instrument Center, Opsec at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. And he will introduce to us more about Opsec. So I will share my screen. Okay, so take it away, John.
Okay, thank you, Genoa. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm John, and as Genoa said, I run the OBS group here at WHOI, and it's called Opsec, Ocean Bottom Seismometer Instrument Center. We are funded by NSF Ocean Sciences, the Marine Geology and Geophysics Division, and we provide and operate seismic instrumentation to support seafloor seismic experiments, right? We make ocean bottom seismographs available to NSF-sponsored investigators and to other investigators as well from industry or are using private funding. We are housed at WHOI under a 5-year cooperative agreement that commenced in 2018. And Opsec replaces an older entity, which you may have heard of, called OPSIP. The C replaces a P. OPSIP was created by NSF in 1999 and jointly operated by WHOI, Scripps, and Lamont. But now it's just WHOI only. And the key thing for all of you who are thinking about using OBSs for proposals is the URL at the end of that slide there. That's a key thing to remember. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've got 2 slides here showing some OBSs. We basically run 2 different types of OBSs. One, a broadband OBS, such as the instrument you see here being deployed from a Coast Guard buoy tender offshore Puerto Rico. And these broadband OBSs carry seismometers that are sensitive to ground motion from periods of 120 seconds to frequencies in excess of 20 to 30 hertz. They stay on the seafloor for a year or more, certainly 15 months is a possibility, and we will deploy instruments for 18 months in the next year or 2. They also carry a pressure sensor, right? That's an easier measurement than the seismometer measurement, and they carry highly accurate clocks, which is a key part of trying to locate earthquakes. Our clocks typically drift about a second per year without correction. Okay, so we have about 100 of these broadband OBSs. Next slide, please. The second type of OBS we operate is what we call a short period OBS. These instruments are physically smaller. They can also stay on the seafloor for extended periods of time, up to a year. They carry the ground motion sensor that these instruments carry is called a geophone. They are sensitive only to frequencies of 1 hertz and higher, right? And we use these instruments to listen to airgun recordings, such as the airgun array that Sean Higgins described in the first talk of this session. And we also use them to record micro earthquakes on say, mid-ocean ridges. I just got off a cruise on the Thompson, which is a ship run by University of Washington, where we recovered and redeployed 23 broadband OBSs, and I think 28 of these short period OBSs, and they were all deployed in passive listening mode, just listening to earthquakes and listening to earth noise. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is a little bit too detailed in terms of the different types of OBSs that are available to the community. The take-home message is Opsec operates 100 broadband OBSs and a much smaller number of short period OBSs. But the key thing that you have to remember here and keep in mind as you write your proposals is think of Opsec as a clearinghouse for you to request significantly greater numbers of OBSs that are available from other institutions. And we do this via subaward to other institutions. Typically Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Scripps operates another 35 broadband OBSs and an additional 70 plus short period OBSs. We also issue subawards to Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory because they also have additional broadband OBSs. And if necessary, we can issue subawards to non-US OBS operators. So I would definitely encourage you to be as ambitious as possible with your proposals. NSF is now supporting some very ambitious OBS proposals, one of which is a very long experiment offshore the Galapagos Islands using 53 broadband OBSs. The PI there is Emily Hooft from University of Oregon. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an older slide that I think is only accurate up to 2018, but it shows where OBSIP and also Opsec has performed experiments. We do experiments all over the world, right? And so don't be restrained by just proposing experiments offshore the United States. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do you go about requesting OBS instrumentation, right? My number one recommendation is to contact Opsec while you're developing your ideas, and we are there to answer any questions you might have. We do that in a confidential manner, and we're not going to tell anybody else about what you're thinking of doing. Okay, so all OBS costs for experiments that are supported by the Marine Geology and Geophysics program of the Ocean Sciences Division of NSF. The costs are not included in your proposed budget, that is your NSF budget in your proposal, but these costs do come out of the MG&G science budget, and we are required to include an informational budget that summarizes the anticipated costs of supporting your experiment, both ashore and at sea. And I'll show you an example budget shortly. But one of the key things to remember here is Opsec will mobilize the instrumentation, ship it, operate it at sea, ship it home, and we will also do the initial data reduction and data archiving. That's what we're tasked to do, right? So again, if you are writing a proposal and you're looking for support from NSF and G&G, you should go to that URL that's listed right there in the middle of the page. If you are submitting to NSF programs such as EAR, right, not MG&G, you should contact a program officer in MG&G for information how to include the OBS costs in your proposal. So that's very, very important that you do that as soon as possible, right? And because OBS is, Opsec operates at sea, we operate typically off Eunos vessels. So you, as a proponent, you're also going to include in your proposal a ship time request, right? And you can see the URL for generating a ship time request is written down in the bottom of the page. So the ship time and the OBS request need to be in sync. So if you're requesting 40 days of ship time from the Eunos web page, you need to include 40 days of ship time in your OBS request. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is a little bit compressed, but it's an example, whitewashed of anybody's name, of what the informational budget looks like. Okay, basically it gives the experiment cost, the principal investigator's name, where the proposal is going, cruise dates, the types of instrumentation, cruise durations, and then estimated costs. And that's there for NSF purposes. So that is a must for your proposal. So Opsec generates that one pager for you, but you have to go to the Opsec website to fill in the appropriate information. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just showing some funded experiments that are not necessarily yet scheduled. And you can see some of the broadband OBSs here on the right-hand side are scheduled out to 2023, 2024. So I think it is important, if you've got a good idea that's going to use some of these broadband OBSs, to get your proposal in sooner rather than later. The broadband OBSs are in heavy demand. Next slide, please. And again, this is just a picture of the people in the Opsec lab. We're all here to help you and help you be successful writing your proposal. And so if you have any questions, in particular, either address them to myself or to Masako Tamanaga, right, who is the operations manager, and we'll be delighted to answer any questions. I think that's the last one, Junwa.
Yes.
Thank you.
So thanks, John, for your talk. Our next speaker is Alice Doyle, Deputy Executive Secretary of Eunos, and she will introduce to us to the new Eunos Marine Facility Planning System. So since we are a little bit running out of time, so our speakers, please limit your time in the required time we ask for. Thank you. So now, Alice, take it away.
Great. I will work hard to keep this in 5 minutes. I've practiced a couple times. So I've got 5 minutes to tell you all about requesting ship time so that you can go out and use those OBSs or the portable seismic system or the Marcus Langseth, excuse me. So we are moving, I'm not sure how much history you all have with it, but we've been using a pretty antiquated system circa 2009, and we're moving to a new system now called Marine Facilities Planning. MFP.US is our website. It's a fully integrated system where we can collect PI ship time requests. We can then schedule those requests. There's a research planning tool, a cruise planning tool, a module, a personnel planning module, an inventory management module. I feel like it always sounds too good to be true when I say these things, but it's a tried and true system that's been used by, gosh, over a dozen nations to plan and support academic oceanographic research. So we're excited to be jumping on board with this. So the form that you fill out to request ship time is called the Ship Time and Marine Equipment Request Form, the SME. And it's focused on just simply getting enough information to be able to schedule your cruise. So there's general questions around when you need to go, when you don't want to go, where you want to go, how you want to go, who's going, like what's going, what equipment you're bringing, generally what big picture equipment that you need for the vessel. And we ask, so this form is submitted when your proposal is submitted. And actually a PDF copy of it is submitted with your FastLane proposal. So we know that some of these proposals go in quite a bit sooner than the time that you're going to, requesting to go out to sea. And so we ask that you, fill in these questions as best as you can at the time and understand there are some holes, but do the best you can to answer these questions thoroughly. Once the proposal is funded, that's when we get into the cruise planning phase, and there's a lot more detailed questions that are coming up. Oh, let me figure out how to move advance. Oops, there we go. So this is the research. This is a cool tool that's a part of MFP. It's called the research planning tool. And so you can see here, I created this cruise where I left from San Diego. I have 2 sampling stations. I created a study area here. Then I'm going over here to do a transect and then going into Manzanillo. The neat thing about this is that it allows you, it's very customizable. So you can, if you decide that on sampling station 2 that you want to spend 2 days there, you can increase this by 2 days. You can change, if you decide that for some reason this transit needs to be slower for whatever reason, you can change the ship speed here. You can also change the speeds of your surveys. Granted, this is not nearly as detailed as the SurvOps program that Sean was talking about. This is more of a general tool. But, and then all of that information goes up here to give you a total ship time required for this project or for what you've outlined here. And that will help when you go to request your ship time to understand how much ship time is required. Some other neat features from this is that you can see here, there's the system will alert you when you are going to be working in somebody else's exclusive economic zone, the EEZ, which I don't want to go into details now, and also the marine protected area. And the big take home there is that it tells you when you're going to need other permits, potentially need other permits. So that's the research planning tool, and it's available in MFP. So how do I get there? You request an account, you go to mfp.us, and there's a big button up here that says request an account. You'll receive an automated email to get into the system. Once you're into the system, I want to alert you to this button right up here. And when you push that button, you'll see which modules are available to you. So right now, we're kind of taking baby steps in this integration. By 2022, we'll have a fully integrated scheduling module. Right now, it's simply the map, which looks like this beautiful map here. Right up here is a button that gives you various layers. This is the GABCO bathymetric layer. It shows us where all of our ships are. There's another layer for ship tracks and a few other fun little things there. The next module we talked about already, which is the research planning module. And then the final module is the scientist portal, which is where you go in and enter your ship time. So that's right here. And it's a matter of clicking this plus button, and it walks you through this form. You can save the form and go back to the form. So if you don't know the answer to a certain question at that time, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So I didn't want to go into the details there. I'm already 13 seconds over. Finally, the most important slide here is this one. It's my contact information. If you have any sort of questions about any of this, requesting ship time or the form or how to get into MFP, alice@eunos.org or mfp@eunos.org. Both of them go to me, and my phone number's there too. Don't hesitate to call. And I would also say that everybody on this call, don't hesitate to call any of these people. Everybody wants to help. So if you have questions, reach out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Alice, for your excellent control on time. And our next speaker is Debbie Smith, Program Director of Marine Geology and Geophysics of National Science Foundation. And she will give us talk on NSF proposal process. Let me share my screen. So, okay, take it away, Debbie.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to try to talk as fast as Alice did. That was really great. That was a great talk, Alice. I have 2 parts to this talk, just 2 slides on how NSF is organized for those who don't know. I didn't know for the longest time, and it takes a while to get to understand that. And so we're organized into directorates, divisions, and programs. And then I'll give an overview of proposal writing and the merit review process. Next slide, please. So the director's office, the Office of Budget, Finance, and Management, and those kinds of things sit at the top of NSF. And then under that are the directorates, the science directorates. And Marine Geology and Geophysics, which I am part of, is in the Directorate for Geosciences. And that also includes Earth Sciences, Atmospheric and Geospace Sciences, and polar programs. And next slide. So if we now look at ocean sciences, there are 3 sections and programs within them. So you can see the hierarchy as we move down. In ocean sciences, we have biological and physical oceanography. In marine geosciences, we have the program I'm in, MG&G, and chemical oceanography. And then integrative programs is where all the ship operations activities are. There's the instrumentation and technical support. One thing I left off of this list was ocean technology, where you can do research and technology development. Ocean drilling sits there, and ocean education. All of this is on the NSF website, and I've put the marine geology and geophysics program up here with all of the program managers and our science assistant. On our website, we describe their science portfolio, what we support. And I think a lot of people think that they shouldn't bother us with questions, but we are definitely available. It's our job. Please ask us questions if you have any. Next slide. So, writing a proposal. There's a document on the NSF website. It's Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, and we call it PAPPG. It's an excellent resource, and it goes into what a proposal is composed of, how you prepare a budget, the merit review process, everything. And when I get questions from the community, I'll answer them, but I also provide a link to this guide because it will give much more detail. It's really, really an excellent resource. Next slide. So parts of a proposal. You want to write a proposal. There are parts to it, and I have them listed here. There are quite a few parts. What I'd like to focus on are the supplementary documents. This is where you give a lot of information that will be needed if you wanted to do field work. But there are different components. So data management plan. This is now required for all proposals. And there's a division of ocean science sample and data policy. And you can find that on the OCE website. Basically, the policy requires that metadata files, full data sets, derived data sets, physical collections, all of these have to be made publicly accessible within 2 years of collection. And they have to be placed in an archive. And reviewers pay a lot of attention to the data management plan. There was a template on the IEDA site, which is Interdisciplinary Earth Data Alliance, but that has migrated now to a site called EasyDMP and .org. So if you search for that, it's a really nice template to help you. Letters of collaboration. If you mention in your proposal that someone's going to help you do something or provide samples, these are different from your co-PIs. You need to document that through a letter of collaboration. And the proposal, the guide that I was talking about, the PAPPG, that gives the text that the letter should contain. And that's what your collaborator will write and sign and send to you as a PDF, and you will upload that. There's a postdoc mentoring plan. If you want to include a postdoc, this should be personalized, is to say how you will help the postdoc in addition to whatever institutional support there is. All right, fieldwork. As Alice just described, you need this ship time request form. It's now ship time and marine equipment form, and that needs to go into the supplementary documents. And as John described, the OBS, the budget for using OBS, this goes here as well. And as he said, that's not in your bottom line budget, that's on your cover page, but it does come out of our program core funding. And before we move on, it's always great to provide a list of suggested reviewers to us, because we typically ask 6 to 9 reviewers, and we get lucky to get 3 reviews. We try very, very hard. So providing a list of suggested reviewers is very helpful and helps us get started looking for reviewers. Next slide, please. So something to think about as you develop your proposal. Who's going to read it? So we have ad hoc reviewers, and those are the experts. Those are the people that are close to your field and can judge it as an expert. And then we have a panel. And the panel is going to see your proposal in a very broad context. We have a very large portfolio in MG&G, so on the panel we'll have paleoceanographers, geophysicists, sedimentologists. So the panel is very much different than the ad hoc reviewers, and the panel will give us advice, seeing everything, all the ad hoc reviews, etc. And the other thing is, you should really make sure that someone reads your proposal before you submit it. And I have not just your SRO, which is your sponsored research office, who will actually hit the submit button, but a colleague. You should ask a colleague to look at it if you don't have collaborators. Next slide. So you submitted your proposal. What happens next? In MG&G, we don't have a deadline. So you submit it when your proposal is ready. Then we send it out for ad hoc reviews. And generally we give people a month or more to send back their reviews. And when we have sufficient proposals, we take them to the panel, giving us a broad view. And then we get together as a program and we talk it over. We look at portfolio balance. We look at all kinds of things. And then we make our recommendation. And I put at the bottom, this does vary across NSF, but this is a process in marine geology and geophysics. Next slide. Okay, we have 2 review criteria, which I think you all know about: intellectual merit, advancing knowledge, and broader impacts of potential to benefit society. Next slide. So what are the review elements that the reviewers are looking for? Will the work advance knowledge? Will it benefit society? Is it creative? Is it potentially transformative? Now it's hard to judge that, but some people like to think of it in that way. Is your work plan clear? Is the team that you put together qualified to do what is proposed? And are the roles of each of those members clearly presented? And do you have the right resources in your proposal to address the goals and hypotheses? Can you do that with the data that you collect, for example, or the models that you are going to run? And then one thing that reviewers look for is, how do they know, how does a proposer know they're going to be successful? So you can say, here are if I find this, that means that. And they're looking for, the reviewers are looking for that, both broader impacts and intellectual merit. Next slide. So broader impacts, just a real quick thing here. It's better to do 1 or 2 things well in broader impacts rather than trying to cover everything. Reviewers now are looking for details on broader impacts. You can't just say, I'm going to work with a high school and do such and such. Now they're looking for letters of collaboration with that high school. So broader impacts should be meaningful, they should be detailed, and you don't want reviewers to think that you just tack them on. All right, next slide. Okay, this is kind of the take-home message. This is second to last slide. It's not like writing a paper, so it's aimed at goals and addressing hypotheses. That's what a proposal is. It's in the future, it's work that should be done. It's got objectives, it's got activities, and you really want to sell the reader on your ideas. You really want to convey the excitement of these ideas. And There's 15 pages to do that, so you have to be succinct, you have to be clear, and the proposal really needs to stand alone. So you can't expect a reviewer to go and look at your previous papers or go to a link or do something like that. We always tell reviewers to judge the proposal that's in front of them. And then you have to write it in a way that it's easily understood by everybody. And my final slide, please. Okay, so you usually would submit your proposal through Fastlane. You still can do that, or research.gov, but just note that NSF is intends to move everything to research.gov, and that's going to happen for MG&G sooner rather than later because we volunteered to be a test program for that. So I think what will happen is you'll go into Fastlane and it will redirect you to research.gov. Okay, and that's my final slide.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Debbie, for your talk. And so next, our final speaker is Holly Smith, Environmental Compliance Officer of National Science Foundation. And she will introduce to us about environmental compliance policies related to seismic research cruises. So take it away, Holly.
Thank you, and I'll try to talk fast to get through this, and so there's time for questions. So forgive me for bumbling through this very quickly. I am an environmental policy specialist, and I assist NSF program officers and PIs with the NSF environmental compliance process. A lot of my time is spent on helping to obtain authorizations, such as incidental harassment authorizations for marine geophysical research, mainly active source research using air guns. My presentation today will mainly focus on these types of more invasive fieldwork activities. Next slide. Federal environmental laws require federal agencies, including NSF, to consider the environmental impacts of their proposed actions as part of their decision-making process. For NSF, these actions include providing funding for research awards. While the vast majority of marine research activities would not be anticipated to have significant impacts on the environment, some fieldwork activities may require a closer look to ensure they would not have adverse impacts on resources, such as threatened and endangered species, sensitive habitats, and cultural resources. For example, high-energy marine geophysical surveys involving air guns may impact marine biological resources, and therefore could require compliance with a variety of environmental laws. Determining which environmental laws may apply for individual research activities depends on the nature and geographic location of the proposed activity. As you can see in this table, I've highlighted some environmental laws, resources they focus on, and where they apply. At the end of my presentation, I'll provide some links where you can find more information about these laws. These environmental laws are not new, but the interpretation, implementation, or associated procedures may be new or modified. Next slide. PI should really begin thinking about environmental compliance matters when preparing a proposal. For example, consider your fieldwork location. Is your site in a marine protected area? If so, do you have flexibility to move it outside of that area or avoid particularly sensitive areas altogether? As a note, marine protected areas likely require additional permits. If you involve an active energy source, what is the smallest source size you can use and still achieve your research goals? Could you change the timing of your activities to avoid impacts on biological resources? For example, avoiding critical migration periods. As already noted, the geographic location of the fieldwork informs the legal framework for environmental compliance. Environmental laws apply in specific geographic locations. Typically, the closer you are to shore, the more environmental laws apply, and the complexity of the environmental compliance process increases. For example, a high-energy seismic survey proposed in shallow U.S. coastal state waters would require compliance with more environmental laws and would involve more processes and take longer to authorize than the same survey conducted in deep international waters. For complicated projects like these, the environmental review process would likely take 12 months or more, so please plan accordingly. As a clarifying note, when NSF is involved with obtaining federal level authorizations, the PI is generally on the hook for obtaining state and local level permits, such as work in state parks, etc. The more effort you make at the planning stage to consider and avoid potential environmental impacts increases your chances for a smoother environmental compliance process and getting into the field. Next slide. Once an NSF program officer is considering recommending your project for funding, also known as a viable proposal, NSF typically begins the formal environmental compliance process. Your NSF program officer may reach out to you for more information if your fieldwork activities may adversely impact marine resources. As noted previously, it's critical for PIs to provide timely information for input into this process. And if necessary, this information will be submitted to regulators. You should keep in mind that once a plan is submitted to regulators, we discourage changing those plans. And if they are changed, it can affect the authorization timeline. The science plan included in the environmental compliance documentation is what should be implemented in the field. You can always do less, but you can't do more. PI assistance may be necessary in providing responses to questions about the project from regulators and from the public during public comment periods. It's critical for PIs to understand the requirements set forth in any authorizing documents. And remember, every project is unique. For example, what is allowable off the coast of North Carolina may be different than what's allowable off the coast of New Zealand. Again, this ties back to which laws apply where, and of course, any unique resources that may be present at a site, such as ESA listed species. After conclusion of the NSF Environmental Compliance Review, NSF provides final project approval and authorization to move forward. Again, this is generally describing the process for the more complicated projects. And as already noted, this process will likely take 12 months or more. Next slide. Again, there are a few last remaining steps for PIs when they're in the field. You have to know your authorization requirements, monitoring mitigation measures, and again, stick to your science plan. Next slide. And finally, PIs may be involved in the final preparing of a monitoring report, and these reports are typically public, so we need to make sure we get them right. Next slide. And as promised, I have just a couple take-home messages, and I think we can skip over this and go to the next slide with the resources for more information about environmental laws. And at the top of this is my contact information. And as others have already mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out at any time during the process of preparing your proposal. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Thanks for our speakers for your excellent and informative talks. So now we still have maybe 5 to 6 minutes for the questions, and I will directly read out from the chat. So I think the first question is from Josephine, and it was already answered by John. So thanks, John. And also the question from Sean Wei was already answered by John. So
okay, I could chime in here. So many questions and answers were going on throughout last 50 minutes or so in the chat. So I would like to suggest everybody's read it. Many are already answered. I think the last question could be probably addressed to Debbie, if I may ask you. So how can students participate in marine research proposals if they have interests? Is it possible for students to participate?
Well, it's always possible if certainly if your advisor is proposing, but a lot of people now are doing early career and student participation in cruises, and I will ask Alice if that is going through Eunos. Sometimes I think people will advertise on their own, but sometimes it goes through Eunos. And I don't know if Alice.
Most of the time it goes through the Eunos office, and we advertise through our listservs. So we have an early career listserv, which I would encourage everyone to write to the Eunos office or write to me, alice@eunos.org, and let me know if you're interested in being a part of that early career listserv. And we'll also put you on our Eunos news listserv. We also have that Cruise of Opportunity program where if PIs have extra bunks, they will let us know and we try to match a student with the PI. I can say that that's kind of gone to the wayside for now because of COVID. We're trying to limit science parties, but we hope that once we get everyone vaccinated and we get past this, we can start that up again too. So.
Hey, thank you, Alice. Thank you, Debbie. Yes, so I think as many PIs now today, when they get funded and then if they have the shipboard opportunities for the early career scientists, they circulate emails, and then Eunos office has been tremendous help to disseminate that information to the community. So please contact Alice at eunos.org. Sorry, I put that in the chat. Anybody who has very pressing questions to Debbie and Holly, it's very kind of rare opportunities that we could see them even virtually in person. So anybody has question? You could unmute and then probably ask. Okay, I think if not, for now, please digest what you have learned for the last 50 minutes or so, and then we're going to have 5 minutes break and then move on to the second session. So is that okay, Casey, and then Joanne, and then Liam?
I was going to say, do you need to start right away? I don't want to lose our time.
Yeah, we can start right away, actually.
Yeah, Jackie, Hiroko, and Anne, are you ready?
Okay, I'll go ahead and pause the recording, and we'd like to thank NSF, but also ask them to please leave so we can have nice open discussions and with no worries. So thank you again so much.
Absolutely fine. Thanks very much, everybody.
And thank you, Genoa, for doing a great job keeping people on time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.